Good morning, Grace Covenant. It is Thursday, January 7th, 2021, and this is your daily devotional from Grace Covenant Presbyterian Church, and I'm Marcia Shoop, one of the pastors at GCPC. I'm glad you're here with me today. I'm assuming if you're here that you are seeking some spiritual grounding in this tumultuous time. This is an unrelenting tumult that we've been caught up in for some time now. And it is the flowing water of a tumult that has been churning and churning and churning for generations. So I know that there is weariness, I know that there is bewilderment, and I know that there's also resolve, and there's also a seeking out of a place to get grounded, a way to orient ourselves to God's voice in this time. So I'm glad you're here. We're going to take a few deep breaths together to get started, and we're doing that not to cultivate anything like passivity or a false sense of comfort. We are breathing together to cultivate groundedness, to kindle stamina, so that we can continue to do the work that God is calling us to do. So let's breathe together. We're breathing in through our nose and out through our mouth. And we're going to take 3 good deep breaths together. You and I share more than oxygen. We share a world. We share socialization and culture. We share mentalities and habits. The air we breathe contains things like white supremacy culture and capitalism and patriarchy. The air we breathe contains things that are toxic, things that have created within us some profound dysfunction as a society. And one of the things that happens when we breathe in the same thing over and over again, when habits become unconscious, when we do something enough times and we are something for long enough that we can't even see it, and that's called habitus. And habitus is really, it's about a susceptibility to certain behaviors, mentalities, and habits. And when you're socialized in white supremacy culture, there is a susceptibility that takes hold, and it's collective. And it includes things like the following defense mechanisms: intellectualization, and that is intellectualizing problems, pain, terror, conflict, feelings, intellectualizing those things in order to protect ourselves from the difficult work that we need to do to change. Another is aversion, aversive behaviors. Aversion is the reaction against certain situations. And that goes hand in hand with avoidance, avoiding certain situations, avoiding certain feelings, avoiding certain truths, to avoid the discomfort, to avoid the anxiety that is produced when one is confronted with these difficult feelings and situations. So white-bodied people are especially susceptible We especially are carriers of this habitus that includes intellectualization, aversion, and avoidance. Intellectualization, aversion, and avoidance. And I'm talking about this with you today because what happened in our Capitol yesterday with an attempt to violently overthrow our government, a duly elected president-elect and vice president-elect, that is the reactivity of whiteness when its power starts to be eroded. So the susceptibility of white-bodied people to see this, explosion of white violence and white terror and white entitlement and white privilege and white supremacy and white denial. Our inclination, our habitus leads us to want to deal with this with the intellect, or to avoid it, or to have an aversive reaction to it. Like, I don't want to be a part of that. I'm not a part of that. I don't see myself in that at all. I'm inviting us to take a deep breath and sink down more into an embodied space, something that's not just about ideas, opinions, thoughts, but it's about feeling. We are a part of what happened yesterday because we are in a culture that is demonically possessed by white supremacy and whiteness. And any white-bodied person that is listening to this and watching this, you need to understand. You are especially susceptible to the way this demonic possession creates a distorted way of seeing the world. And I'm hearing it and I'm seeing it in the way white-bodied people that I know and love are reacting to what's happening. I hear people talking about we need to learn how to listen to people who have different opinions. What happened yesterday is not about differences of opinion. I hear people, white-bodied people who I love, talking about that we need to understand how to come together and create unity. What happened in our Capitol yesterday is not about a lack of unity. What happened in our Capitol yesterday is about the demon of white supremacy. And demons are legion. There are many. And when they are exorcised, when they are in the process of being exorcised, they are violent. The demonic manifestation of white supremacy is not going to go quietly. And make no mistake, it is being exorcised from our culture even now. It's hard work, it's arduous, slower than it should be. But a lot of the reasons why it's slower than it should be is because of white people, and not necessarily the white people who invaded the Capitol building yesterday and attempted an insurrection. But the white-bodied people like you and me, the moderates, the progressives, the liberal white people, who like to think that we're better than that. But yet we're still the ones intellectualizing, talking about learning to hear different opinions, resisting the hard work of mutual liberation, resisting understanding ourselves as captive to this demonic possession. So we have to shift the way we are talking about what's happening. Use the language of whiteness. and white supremacy. Use the language of demonic possession. Use incarnational language. This isn't just about ideas. Thinking isn't going to get us out of this. This is gut-wrenching work. There's a physicality to it. There's a physicality to the ways that white-bodied people are allowed to move about the world. The optics of white people invading the capital of the United States of America with very little resistance from law enforcement. If there needs to be a clearer picture to you of what whiteness looks like and how it moves in the world and its sense of entitlement and the ways the systems are set up to protect it and to authorize it and to make excuses for it, I don't know that we're ever going to have a clearer picture than what happened yesterday. I've seen it heard and said, and I've heard it said many times in the last 24 hours. If black-bodied people and brown people and indigenous people attempted to invade the Capitol building, it would have been a massacre. It wouldn't have just been about arrests. It would have been a mass murder. I believe that. And if you don't believe that, you need to look at the history of this country, the history of terror and violence against indigenous people, the genocide of indigenous First Nations people, the terror, the violence, the brutality of chattel slavery, the terror, the violence, the brutality of mass deportation and mass incarceration. These things are real, and it's whiteness, not differences of opinion, whiteness that distorts your ability to see it, that makes you think that this is about a difference of opinion or political parties or a lack of unity. We need to shift our language, and we need to allow that shift in language to shift the way that we feel and react, the way that we're able to inhabit these contentious spaces. Because we have to have the courage and clarity to name the demon, to call it out, to ask it to name itself as we call it out. Because we will never exorcise this demon if we can't call it by name. Whiteness, white supremacy culture, white capitalist patriarchy, white domestic terrorism, white dominance. Grace Covenant, my prayer for you today is that you understand the resolve that I have as your pastor for the work that we're called to do. This is why we're doing the work that we do. This is why we've done it for the last 4.5 years. This is why we won't stop doing the work of dismantling and disrupting and exorcising the demons of white supremacy culture. Because this is what faithful people are called to do and to be. This is what Jesus is leading us to do and to be. Jesus was a disruptor, a dismantler, an exorciser of the demons of white supremacy culture. And so that's what we're going to keep doing. So that's why I'm telling you to take deep breaths, drink a lot of water, eat good food, get rest, talk to friends, go on a walk, love on your pets, do whatever it is you need to do to make your body strong and resilient and able to persevere, because this work will not be done in our lifetimes. This is work that we have to keep doing together, and we will keep doing together. I'm grateful for you and for this community willing to do this work. And if you wonder what the work is or how it looks or feels or sounds like or looks like, come to church at Grace Covenant, because it's not a one workshop kind of thing. It's not a 12-step thing. It's not a 21-day challenge. It's not a book. It's not a class. Okay? It is a way of life. A way of life that's every day. And there are beautiful things that you'll find out as you truly engage and give yourself to this divinely infused invitation for us to keep going together until we can take a deep breath and look around and say, wow, something is new. Something is better. I can feel the healing, and it's good. So blessings to you, Grace Covenant, and I'm sending you love and gratitude.